Hi, welcome to week 4 of this basic course, Toolkit for PE Teachers. This is the 5th module, Skill and Fitness Assessments in Physical Education. So let's condition ourselves for learning of this module with the table of contents. First is the introduction, where we talk about importance of assessments in physical education. Then what are the key questions assessment answers for teachers, for students, for parents? Second topic is why are assessments important in physical education? So this brings the perspective of student progress monitoring, differentiating instruction, promoting growth mindset in students, and data-driven teaching. The third topic is the common misconceptions in physical education assessment. First one being a grading based on selective participation and dress code. One-time performance tests. One size fits all grading scales. Next, we talk about the type of assessments in physical education, namely formative assessments, summative assessments, pre and post, and continuous or informal assessments. Next, we discuss strategies and planning of assessments in schools. What are the different grading methods like norm reference and criterion reference grading? Then we design a implementation plan for assessments in school. Next is assessment tools in physical education. Tools which are going to help you design, conduct, and create report cards. So these are divided over pre-assessment, templates and student ID systems, during assessment, data collection tools, digital dashboards, and report cards, post-assessments. And also some student self-assessment tools that we will discuss, which will help you manage large class size or large schools. Next is covering the core topic in this module, which is skill, fitness, and SEL assessment, which is social and emotional learning or life skill assessments. Although there is a separate module for life skill assessment, but here we will just touch upon and understand what are these assessments look like. Here we cover what needs to be assessed. And then we deep dive into fitness, skill assessments, and social and emotional skill assessments. Next is fitness assessment components and testing methods. So various components of fitness, which is your cardiovascular endurance or aerobic capacity, your sprint capacity, muscular strength and endurance, flexibility, your core strength, body composition, and then what are the various standardized test protocols that we can apply, which will be obviously based upon your school infra availability and environment. Then we cover or design pre, during, and post assessment checklists. Pre-assessment preparation, which starts 2 months or 3 months before, up till the day of assessment, on the day of assessment checklist, and the post-assessment checklist for creating, managing data, analyzing data, and creating report cards for parents and other stakeholders. After fitness assessment, then we cover skill assessments, what needs to be evaluated for various age groups, fundamental movement skills for the foundational stage. As we progress through the grades, then we assess both specific skills. We create some examples for assessment rubrics, which could be commonly used between basketball, soccer, volleyball, etc. Then we cover Khelo India assessments. What are the fitness batteries of tests across various age groups? What are the procedure, and we'll go through some videos for Khelo India. We'll also touch upon the Khelo India app and the portal, and how you will assist parents and schools to maintain data and check the report cards, the scores of the students. Lastly, we cover the holistic progress card mandated by CBSE and how you can facilitate, uh, other teachers, classroom teachers, coordinators uh, to fulfill this requirement. And I will bring in the perspective of physical education requirements for the HPC card. And lastly, we'll recap and discuss final thoughts and best practices in PE assessment. So let's start with the first module, which is introduction. So what is assessment? So assessment is the process of evaluating student learning. It helps educators, teachers to make informed decisions about their own teaching strategies, styles, pedagogies, and student progress. So assessment serves as an effective tool to enhance learning. So there are two questions that assessments answers. First is what was learned, and the second is how well it was learned. First question covers what students have gained in terms of skill, knowledge, and understanding through the PE instruction. So did students acquire the expected skill, like shooting a basketball with the right technique, with their elbow at 90-degree angle, or kicking the football, with inside of the foot, or passing the football with inside of the foot. Knowledge, when to shoot, when to pass, the spatial awareness, the player position, So all the knowledge and the conceptual understanding around that skill. Then, do students understand the principle behind movement and the movement concept and fitness? Can students explain and articulate what they have learned to peers, to teachers, to parents, which serves as an evidence of learning? It's very important that students are able to articulate what they are being trained upon. And then their understanding on various external factors which affects their performance. It could be your screen time, the fitness levels, the moving time in your PE classes, the feedback process with peers, with teachers, their fitness and their participation or competitive exposure. The second question that assessment answers is how well it was learned. So these questions evaluate the proficiency, skill progression, and ability to apply this learned skill, knowledge in different situations, in game situations or in other domains in life situations. So are students making that measurable progress in that age group as they progress through the grades? How well are students mastering these skills over a period of time with accuracy, consistency? And are students able to self-assess, self-reflect on their progress, create their own goals of learning, create their own learning targets, right? And understand where their competency, at what stage is their competency in order to achieve those goals? And then can students apply their learning beyond the deliberate practice, which is, the drills, repetitive drills that we do to master a skill in a game situation. So like some students are very good in individual skills or with partner, but when it comes to game situations, they're not able to apply that skill. So it's like a juggling in football, right? Accurately passing a ball to a partner, but when it comes to game situations, they are not able to implement that skill with that precision. So why are assessments important in physical education? It helps in monitoring student progress and learning growth. Assesses whether students are improving in physical skill, fitness, and movement concepts over a period of time. So it helps in identifying if students understand key fitness principles and can apply them in real life scenarios. It ensures standards based learning. It aligns assessment with national and state PE standards or benchmarks to ensure skill and fitness benchmarks are met. Formative assessments helps into adjusting teaching strategies before final grading. It helps in differentiating instruction for student based on their needs. Helps in modifying, giving us direction to modify our curriculum, our lesson plan with students with special need or with varied skill or fitness levels. It provides personalized goal setting to encourage self improvement and confidence in PE activities. It encourages student reflection and self assessment. They understand their own progress by self assessments, peer feedback, and fitness tracking. It teaches students how to set personal fitness goal and create a goal ladder and track their own improvement. Supports a growth mindset in physical education. So they start to, if assessments are conducted effectively in the right context, students don't view that as a judgment on them, but rather than as a tool to improve their fitness and skills. Then it uses the data to improve teaching and curriculum planning, adjust your lesson plans, and focus where students are struggling, and track the longitudinal data to measure effectiveness of pedagogies and different instructional methods. It promotes lifelong awareness and habit formation for fitness. So they leave the school with knowledge and skills to stay active throughout their life and become a lifelong mover. Very important topic is the common misconceptions and outdated practices in PE and assessments. First is grading based on selective participation or very basic uh, requirements like dress, coming to school with to their PE classes with dress code. So this issue is that it does not reflect skill development or learning. Participation is a positive thing because it's and if it happens on a regular basis, on a consistent basis for entire year, it contributes to habit formation. But there is a trend that some of the students only participate, to come in a spotlight during tournament, during some competition, and then they fall off and they do not come back regularly to PE classes or sports after school programs. So solution is that you focus on student engagement, effort, and skill acquisition instead of these basic selective participation and dress code credits that we give to students. Second is physical outcome based grading, which is your how many free throws a student makes. So it ignores differences in physical ability, background, learning pace, and it focuses on competition or score, where students then learn this bad habit of ignoring their technique, their form, and they're more concerned about the score. So the focus should more be that although I saw that you were not able to score a point this time, but I really liked your elbow position, your head position, your eye position, and you are appreciating their understanding of the technique, and as a result of the process, scores will eventually improve. So solution is assess technique, understand movement cues. They should Students should know what are various movement cues for various sports skill or fundamental movement skills. Third is one-time performance test without feedback. So it does not allow students to improve over time. So we need to use various kind of assessment, formative assessment, continuous assessment that gives students multiple opportunities to demonstrate that they've absorbed that feedback and they are growing. Lastly, using one size fits all grading scale. This needs to be uh, differentiated with rubrics which should be age appropriate or skill appropriate of a particular uh, group of students who are engaged in a sports specialized program. So, what are the assessment categories? Very basic is your continuous and informal assessment, which is extremely important and largely ignored in PE classes. Second is the formative assessments, which periodically happens. Uh, then you have a pre and post, a baseline or an end line kind of assessment. This could be end of each beginning and end of each unit, or it could be beginning of the term or end of the term if you're doing a fitness assessment. And lastly, then you have the summative assessment, which is kind of a formal assessment at the end of the unit, like in academics, you have annual exam or board exams. So this is that kind of assessment at the end. So continuous or informal assessments, these are quick and easy, done continuously throughout a lesson plan to check the understanding in real time. So if this was a live class, I would have asked few questions whether all the students are on the same page to check their understanding. Uh, you know, create routines that if I make a statement, you need to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So these very basic strategies can be used to check understanding and progress of the students. Quick questioning between the activities during transition or during beginning of the activity when you're setting up the props, right? You could ask certain questions or give them some points to discuss. So that contributes to your continuous and informal assessments. Uh, there are some response cards also. You can be innovative and create response cards for children for their question, and they maintain a log of feedback given to them. Second is the formative assessments. These are periodic assessments. It could be monthly, it could be quarterly, to evaluate the learning progress during a unit or an event. So it provides an ongoing feedback to guide instruction and help students improve before final evaluations. So this is extremely important. Uh, Most of our assessments are summative in nature, where we are asking students to improve on their scores at the year end. However, we have not given them any opportunity to improve their technique, which will in turn help in raising their scores. So some of these formative assessments which you could use and extremely important with some of the senior grades, especially with large school, large class size, is your peer and self assessment. So there is a structure that you can create around peer and self assessment to make it effective. So students, for example, students use rubrics to assess themselves or their peers when they are doing certain kind of skill learning. You can use exit tickets where students give you some responses to your question before leaving a class. There are certain skill checklists that you can put up in your PE space, and student can also track progress against these learning objectives. Lastly, if facilities allow and you have budget for video, then you can also use video analysis. Extremely useful to review student reflect on their own performance. This is especially useful in the context of sports specific training. When you have pre and post assessments, as I discussed, this is before or after a lesson. It could be beginning of the term, end of the term. So let's say you starting in April, and you conduct a fitness test in April, and then you give them the formative assessments, do continuous assessments, and give the opportunity to students to grow. And then you conduct the endline assessments, and then you measure the effectiveness of these uh, lesson plans, your teaching strategies, and how well they were aligned to student growth. Then lastly is the summative assessment. This is like a final evaluation conducted at the end of the unit to assess mastery of multiple learning objectives. So it measures students' achievement and determines overall learning outcomes. For example, performance-based assessments. Student demonstrates skills, and so it's like a fitness circuit where you have multiple of skills involved and you have rubrics for each skill and you're grading them uh, on this. And there could be written tests and quizzes, final project and presentation that the students can create on a personal fitness improvement. It could be a submission of self-assessment, skill progress, and reflections. Uh, in current context, these are mostly assessment report cards that teachers prepare, physical education teachers prepare on their fitness course. So, what are the key takeaways for this module? Assessment is essential in P. It helps track student progress, guide teaching strategies, and promote skill development. Two questions assessment answers: what was learned and how well it was learned. Then we touched upon common issues in traditional PE grading, participation grading, dress code grading, and then you have assessments. Uh, we discussed about assessment should focus on skill, effort, and understanding of concepts. Lastly, assessment promotes growth, helps students to create their personal goals, their goal ladder, uh, teaches them to reflect and improve over a period of time. The next unit in this module is assessment strategy and planning. Let's look at some of the effective assessment strategies in physical education assessments. We need to adopt a assessment for learning approach rather than assessment for grading approach, which focuses on student reflection, self-improvement, and continuous feedback. Key strategies are post learning outcomes, learning targets, or learning criteria at the beginning of the lesson. Students should know what they are being assessed on or what they are supposed to be demonstrating post a lesson plan. For example, today we are working on improving agility. You will be tracked for your time in the shuttle run, and you need to note your progress as well as your quality of your turns, the quality of your strides. So it has a descriptive feedback, qualitative feedback on the technique, and also uh, on the score that they are supposed to be targeting on. Use qualitative feedback over just score as we just discussed. Instead of saying you ran 15 laps, you must say you improved by 3 laps since last time, and keep focusing on your breathing technique or your stride length or your arm movement, various aspects of running technique. Third is encourage self and peer assessment, where students are able to reflect on their performance and provide feedback to peers. So there is a structure that you need to create around it. You can apply strategies like making peer partners, feedback partners. When you're doing group activity, then let's say there are 5 stations which are required in the activity. You can have a 6 stations, and this sixth group, their role is to basically provide, whenever a group comes to that station, their role is to provide a peer feedback for every group. Then you rotate uh, through these stations, so everybody gets a chance to be reviewed and to give review to other groups. So these are certain standards that you can create, how to give feedback before you can ask children to use this as a tool. Second is, observe your partner's dribbling technique, what adjustment they can make. So in this example, it is very essential that the child should first of all know the various criteria on which he is able to observe the dribbling technique for. And these needs to be articulated very well. And children first need to articulate this themselves before they can start doing these peer assessments. Fourth is use rubrics for skill and fitness assessments. These helps assess competencies over time and rather than just one-time performance. So it could be, A, B, and C, which is beginner, developing, and proficient. And we will touch upon these grading systems and creation of rubrics in the skill assessment section. So these were some of the strategies for assessments. So grading method, as we discussed, the primary motive of assessments is not grading. It is student learning, reflecting on our own teaching strategies, and this is more apt for your summative assessments. So they are commonly used two kind of grading methods. First is the norm referenced method. So how it works in PE, this method compares a student's performance to that of their peers. So for example, there is class 3A and you're doing a beep test. So if I have done 10 laps, then I am not, my performance is not judged against a certain standard or a benchmark, but it is judged against the performance of my other students or the peers in the class. So I'm ranked based on my percentile or averages or standard deviation rather than the predefined benchmark. So this is best used for competitive sports, for sports selection, for talent identifications, and to create benchmarking. Then you have an example like you have a beep test, right? Students in top 10% may get an A grade. The next 25% may get a B grade. Next 25% may get a C grade. So it completely depends on how you want to design it. And the bottom 10% gets a D grade. So performance in norm referenced method is relative to the entire group rather than an absolute score. The second method is the criterion referenced. So this measures your performance against a fixed standard or benchmark. So each student is graded independently without comparison to other students in the class. It is helpful in your personal growth, tracking, and for skill mastery. So taking the same example for beep test, here if you have got 10 laps, then you are not measured against students with 9 laps or higher laps than you. Basically, you have predefined the structure that up till level 10 or 10 laps, you will get an A grade. Students scoring or doing laps which falls under level 7 and 9 get a B, and level 5 and 6 get a C average. And below 4, you get a D average. So you have set a standardized benchmarking for each of the grades. So this is regardless of the class or the other students in the class, how they perform. So let's create a broad level physical assessment implementation plan. So this is like first step is planning assessment schedules, talking to principal, talking to coordinators. What can be that lean period in academics where I'm able to hold my assessments, especially in beginning of the session and end of the session, and notify students accordingly. What are the tests and when are they going to happen? What are the target goals. You could also discuss last year's assessment scores with them. Step 2, ensuring all equipment and safety protocols are in place. If not, then you need to ensure that you talk to the right stakeholders department to get this in place. Third is, during the assessment, you conduct tests in an organized and structured manner. Fourth is, which is post-assessment, analyze data, generate report, and provide student feedback. And lastly, you discuss results with parents and suggest remedial measures or improvements. So this is a broad level plan, and we will deep dive into the implementation plan with various checklists and processes. What are the different tools in physical education? So in pre-assessments, you can use templates, you can use sheets to plan your assessments, to record section-wise name list, to organize data for recording name list of children. You can create student IDs because some of these students have very similar name and surname are exactly identical. So to avoid duplication, you can give them special IDs. What are the different rubrics that you will create? What are you going to assess? What skills are you going to assess? And based on that, you design a detailed criteria for evaluating these skills. So during assessments, your friendly tools are your input sheets. These are highly useful to collect data in an organized manner, to observe record your observation and scores. Your assessment equipment. This could be a sit and reach box, your stopwatch, beep test music, whistle, speakers, music files, etc. Then these days you have a lot of good tech tools available at your disposal. If your schools has a budget, you must invest in them. These are wearable fitness trackers, sports apps, automated computer vision apps. So these apps do not require data collection, which currently deals with a problem of inaccurate data recording. So they automatically record the data, not just the data, but also some of the computer vision application. They also provide feedback, descriptive feedback on the technique of the students. Then post-assessment, the fitness data that you have collected itself becomes a tool to derive student grading, performance in physical testing, as we just discussed with method number 1, which is norm reference method. Then your assessment report card. It provides a summary of students' performance in your physical education across skill and fitness and their position, across their grade. It could be gender-wise as well. Then you could also create a digital dashboard for students, for school leaders, for parents, using Google Classroom, other applications, to make the information more accessible and create action plans for improvement. Then there are a few student self-assessment, formative assessment tools like your fitness journals, where students keep a note about their fitness journey, their skill journey, their own progress in running, let's say push-ups, flexibility, their weight. Then there are goals setting sheets for various tests. You can have your benchmarks, your monthly targets, your quarterly targets, your yearly targets, or competition targets. Then you have peer tracking, partner checklists. Student says their friends' movement and technique and their scores. And you have peer feedback forms, again, for providing constructive criticism or feedback and motivation to your peers. So let's discuss the key takeaways from this unit: strategy and planning in assessments. So a structured plan ensures effective assessments and helps students prepare for evaluations. Use all kind of assessments like formative and summative assessments to provide feedback and track progress. PE teachers should use rubrics for objective grading rather than subjective opinions. And then we discussed the norm reference versus the criterion reference grading, and choosing the right grading method on students' needs. And then the implementation plan, which has your pre-planned schedules, which ensures safety, organizes data collection, and provides feedback for improvement. The next unit, which is the core unit of this module, which is your fitness, skill, and SCL assessments. So we'll look at what needs to be assessed. So fitness assessment is one using standardized tests to measure various components of fitness levels. Secondly is the skill assessment, test to measure the students' fundamental movement skills, sports specific skills. Then we also assess cognitive and knowledge based assessment, affective development, which tests the students' understanding of fitness concepts, sporting rules, and other critical thinking aspects relating to cognitive development of a child. Lastly, we have social and emotional skill assessments. You observe interpersonal and intrapersonal uh, aspects of the students while they're playing the activities. So some of the intrapersonal aspects involve self-regulation, uh, you know, inhibition, self-discipline, and interpersonal include your collaboration, teamwork, communication, problem solving, sportsmanship. Fitness assessments. So, what are the various components of fitness assessments? First is your cardiovascular endurance, which is your aerobic capacity, the ability of the heart, lungs, and blood vessels to supply oxygen during a sustained physical activity. So, the time duration is for a longer time. Example activities are running, swimming, cycling, jumping. When you do a pacer test, that's where you use your endurance capacity or aerobic capacity. The second is muscular strength or explosive strength. So the maximum force for a muscle group can exert in a single effort. So like you have your start in your 100 meters, 200 meters. You have your jumps in basketball, right? Your sudden kicks or taking off, in basketball or football. So these are all explosive strength. Third is muscular endurance, the ability of muscles to perform repeated contractual movements over a period of time without fatigue. So, for example, you have squats, planks, body weight exercises, push ups, even long distance running can test your muscle endurance. Then you have flexibility, the ability of joints to move through a full range of motion. Example activities, obviously, yoga, stretching, dynamic warm up, gymnastics, and all. The last aspect is the body composition, which is the proportion of fat, muscle, bone, and water in your body. This is measured using BMI, skin fold. Uh, you have waist to hip ratio also, and then some advanced methods like bioelectrical impedance. So, what are the key objectives of fitness assessment for school students? First is it evaluates physical fitness levels. Secondly, it monitors growth and progress of these levels, and on the basis of which you set personal fitness goals, personal fitness targets, and promotes health awareness. It identifies strengths and weaknesses, encourages lifelong physical activity, supports physical education curriculum, and lastly promotes physical and mental well-being. So why do fitness assessments? It is important for tracking, we just discussed, evaluating fitness levels, educates them about 5 components of fitness, the habits around fitness achievement, and helps them gain a better understanding of their own health. And through testing, student can set personal goals to improve their overall fitness and well-being. Now we'll discuss how to do fitness assessments. So there are certain standardized tests to measure student fitness levels for each of these 5 components. Along with cardiovascular endurance, you also have your sprint capacity, which is measured by your 30-meter, 50-meter sprints. Then you have your muscular strength, muscular endurance, flexibility, and body composition. So some of these standardized tests are for aerobic capacity, beep test, which is a 20-meter as well as a 15-meter test. So you can adjust according to the infra available in your school. It is also known as pacer test. There's a similar test which is a yo-yo test, which has a break and kind of replicates game situations more realistically, and this is a go-to test for many national teams. And you have 600-meter run or walk test, and you have 1-mile run. So there are various tests there that can be used to measure aerobic capacity. It will depend on the infra and the resources that you have. Some of the schools may not have a 400-meter track, and if you want to do a 600-meter run test, then it's difficult to do, and it's misleading in terms of the timings that you will get if we do not have a full 400-meter track. In that case, you could use beep test. For anaerobic capacity, we have 30-meter dash test, or it could be 50-meter dash test. Again, depends on your school infra. Then you have shuttle run test, Illinois agility test, and T-test agility drill also. So these are more game specific, not out and out sprint capacity test, but it resembles a game situations more realistically. Then you have muscular strength, upper body. So you have medicine ball throw, you have pull-ups, you have chin-ups, your hand grip strength test, and your bench press test. So based on which sports are you conducting in your schools, and which specific sports skills you want to test. Then you have, for lower body, you have standing broad jump, and your vertical jump test, leg press, strength test, squat max repetition test. These are again very sports specific tests. You may not be doing all these tests at a school level, but just for your understanding. Then you have muscular endurance. So you have push-up test, sit-up, curl-up, wall sit, and plank endurance test for your core. For flexibility, you have sit and reach test, which has to be done with a box. Without the box, you can do it with V-sit test. Then for shoulders, you have shoulder flexibility, and you have a trunk lift test. For body composition, as we discussed, you have a BMI calculation, which requires your height and weight, your waist to hip ratio, skin fold caliper test for your body fat percentage measurement, and you have bioelectrical impedance analysis, which is just for your reference. You may not be using that in your school. So let's look at an example of the beep test. Here you can see the person taking the test is standing behind a line, and there is an end line which is 20 meters apart. So you will have a beep test music, and which you need to either have it on your phone or you are playing it on a good speaker, because currently this example shows only one person, but when you are in a school setting, you will have a class of 40, and then you have a lot of background noise as well. There could be buses around, traffic, and children may not be able to hear the beep. So beep is very important in this test, where children need to hear that. So either you conduct it on a big speaker, and that really motivates children as well and excites them to perform well. So what are the prerequisites? You have a start line, end line at 20 feet apart, 20 meter apart. You have your beep test music with appropriate speaker. You also have a observer at the start line and at the end line to basically observe a fault. If student has not reached the line or crossed the line before the beep. So when the test begins is with the beep, and the beep also tells you the number of laps that you are basically counting or you have completed. So students wait for the beep to start. So student may not be able to hear, though you will have to then use a whistle as well. Also need to tell students that this is a progressively increasing in terms of speed. So do not sprint at the outset. And you have to adjust according to the speed. Now, as you can see, only 1 foot was beyond the end line, and that constitutes a foul. But one foul doesn't mean that the student will be terminated from the test. It has to be 2 consecutive faults in order for the students to be terminated. Once that happens, so as you can see, that's the warning 1. Again, student crossover. And after the first warning, again, the student was not able to cross the line. So here is when you record their score. So at whatever lap that the students were terminated, you do a -2. So suppose this was at the 9 lap that he was not able to do 2 consecutive laps, and the score will be 9 minus 2, which is 7. So some of the things that you need to keep in mind is for beep test, you need to group students in such a way that you have good runners and runners who are not so good and improving in a mixed batch, so that the good runners will sustain the test for a longer time, and slow learners who are not good at running at the moment may fall out of the test in earlier than these. So it is easier to record scores for these students who are exiting the test at different point in time. So you have same caliber of runners running at the same time, it's likely they are going to off the test at the same time, and then it's difficult to record their scores, right? Let's look at the other test, which is standing broad jump. This is for your lower body explosive strength. As you can see, the student is standing beyond the line, starting line. Then with the measuring tape, you have already measured the jumping space, and there are interim markers that you have put at 1 meter, 1.5 meter, 2 meter, 2.5 meter. This is measured in meters. And you have to demonstrate this, the technique of the standing broad jump to the student, so that he performs well and gets a good score. Again, this is not happening on the day of assessment. As we had discussed previously, formative assessments, gives the opportunities to students to learn these techniques and master these techniques before they come to your summative assessments. So look at the technique. Knees are slightly bent, the swing of the arm, and then you jump, you take off with both of your legs, and then wherever is the heel lands, the first heel, and that's where you measure the distance. Next is we can take the sit-ups test. You need a mat for this, even if it is a good surface. Right now, the example here is shown on a artificial turf, which is made of plastic. Even that is harmful for children. So ensure that you have a proper yoga mat. So this is how you will need a partner for this assessment, who places the hand on the knee of the student. So you have to be very gender sensitive about this, and you only make partners with the same gender, and also ensure that when the girls are taking the test, the boys are not around this area uh, to ensure child safety of the girls. So here the ankles are joined, the knees are joined. As you can see, the hand is just near the ear. It is not putting strain on the neck. That's the common mistake that children do, that they interlace their fingers behind their neck, and that puts a lot of strain on their neck. So that should be avoided. And the partner counts. So you're bringing your elbows, you're crossing the knee with your elbows. That's how far you need to go. And ensure that you are emphasizing on a rhythm, on a pace which is comfortable. It should not be too slow or too fast. So this is the right rhythm, the right pace at which sit-ups are performed. So we had discussed creating checklist to ensure our assessments are organized and streamlined to conduct them effectively. So with using the example of fitness tests, we will create these checklists. This is applicable for all kind of tests, whether it is fitness, skill, or your social emotional assessments. So the tasks can start 2 months or 3 months even to the day of before assessments. So that is the period for your pre-assessment checks. These tasks are divided under communication tasks. So students should be informed about the assessments that they will undergo and given ample time to practice before the actual evaluation. Not just time, they should also know their target areas for each of the tests. And then they also need to get their descriptive feedback, their rubrics, that kind of feedback in order for them to practice before the actual evaluation. The assessment schedule should be discussed with coordinators and principal. It cannot happen in isolation because whenever you require kids, if during that period students are required to go out or to take some academic uh, project or exams, then it's difficult for you to get all students at the same time, right? So your assessment schedule should always be very democratic, and you should coordinate with all stakeholders involved. And final plan should be signed off by coordinators and principal and put up on the notice board. So it is visible that this particular time period or number of classes, let's say in starting April, that's for your baseline assessments, and endline assessment maybe in the month of January, just before the exams, is reserved for assessments. Parents should also be notified about the assessment and schedule, and you should ask for consent either beginning of the session for all kind of assessments. So you're not reaching out to parents again and again. Identify students with physical or medical issues who should not participate in the test and share this information with school coordinator. Post COVID, because of vaccination or other reason unknown, we cannot really attribute to vaccination, but there have been increasing case of uh, cardiovascular issues in physical education classes with children also. So we have to be very extra cautious and get that consent. And if there are certain issues that have happened post COVID, we need to ensure that we do not strain children in physical test. Then obtain principal's approval for the report template that will go at the end of the summative assessment. That's your end line assessment. That format needs to be created by you and based on the context of your school to record those assessment results. Either it is for fitness, skill, or both, or even for SCL. So that template needs to be approved by the principal because it will be shared to your parents. So this was communication task. Then you have the paperwork task. which involves the verification of the student name list, which is very important, and with the class register, or it could be also cross-verified with the school accountant, that these are the students who are eligible to take the test. There could be certain administrative problems also which might come up. Uh, so you need to ensure that this is the actual name list and verified by coordinator, and the student data. Uh, this name list will help you create the on ground input sheet in which you will record the scores or your observation for each student. So it is very essential that you have these sheets ready before these assessments based on the name list that you will get. So you will have your name list, and then what is an on ground input sheet, but it adds to the test to the sheet. So you suppose you're taking a beep test or you're taking a standing broad jump test. So the entire sheet includes all these tests that you're conducting, so that whenever the test happens, you are just writing the score on the same sheet. Then verify the availability of necessary equipment, props. So if any items are damaged, unusable, you need to raise a purchase order with the account, get the necessary paper approvals, and to get these equipment well in time, because you're doing a baseline assessment in April, beginning of the session. Then some of the ground tasks, right? The weather conditions should be checked. Right? At the planning stage itself, you may have, if you're slightly delayed, then May is very hot, and then June, July is your rainy season. You may not be able to do your um, baseline assessments during this period. So that's why you need to take this weather condition in your planning uh, phase itself. Your ground markings should be completed in advance. Your planning of your endurance test is extremely important. It should not be clubbed with other strainful tests like sprint capacity or your push-up test or your other test, which could demands a lot from children. So you should have your the most difficult test, let's say beep test, on day one with flexibility and height weight, and on day two you can have all your other tests. Ensure the assessment schedule is planned for at least 2 days for accurate results, as we just discussed. Drinking water availability, first is assistance. If the school nurse is involved, explain the assessment process to her and the need for their assistance. Specific use cases and scenarios are to be given to the personnel involved assisting you in the assessments. On the day of assessment, so let's say first day is your medicine ball throw, standing broad jump, 30-meter, and sit-ups. So you have your input sheets, as we had discussed, the on-ground input sheets and documentation ready for recording scores, observations. So all these details have already been verified and they are ready on the day of the assessment. You have the printouts. You cannot have your laptop and record it on your laptop, because you'll be doing these tests out in broad daylight, and the sun reflects on the screen. It's very difficult to see and enter at the same time. It's not advisable to have electronic items out in the sun. So ensure that you have hard copies of these input sheets. Yeah. So water and first aid, ensure drinking water availability for all participants. To ensure an organized water break, you should have these water availability near your stations rather than away from stations, because then it breaks the momentum of your assessments and increases the class management requirements. Keep first aid assistance ready in case of injuries or fatigue. And as we discussed, the school nurse needs to know where specifically her role is, and you need to really pinpoint that this will be your starting position, or how will you move across when the assessments are in place based on the type of test. And so the nurse or the medical assistant should be near the most painful tests. Then you have ground and equipment setup. Check ground is safe and properly marked, because school grounds sometimes are used for multiple other uses as well, and there could be some leftovers, glass item, pins, and all that, which could raise a concern. So make sure that this is properly observed. Marking stations and organization. So mark all stations clearly for each skill and fitness test. Organize students in appropriate groups, rotations to avoid crowding, so that you create a routine. Children already know that from this station they have to go to medicine ball throw, they have to go to standing broad jump, then they can go to sit up, and they can go to 30-meter. Or you can change the order also. So this should happen much before, on the day of assessment. That's be included in the pre-assessment checklist. So this usually is covered during your formative assessment, because you conduct these assessments also, in a very similar manner to familiarize the students with the process of assessment in the summative stage. And also brief all your support staff in terms of observers, timekeepers, score recorders. If you have those people, those many resources to support you, have an orientation program with them before the assessments, and discuss their various roles and use cases where mistakes could happen. Communication and briefing, explain rules and procedures to students in a simple and clear manner. So this has already happened, as I mentioned, that we need to give chance to students to know these procedures well in advance. The scores, the target scores also, they need to know well in advance. But still we need to summarize this on the day of assessments. And allow students to ask questions before the assessment begins. Ensure staff and coordinators are informed of the test flow and their roles. Warm-up and test execution. Conduct a structured warm-up based on the specific test that you are taking. Ensure all students follow safety protocols during testing. Allow recovery time between different tests to prevent fatigue. That is very essential, especially in the month of April, as summers are getting hotter and hotter. We need to ensure that we give proper breaks for hydration. Score recording and review. Utmost carefulness has to be taken while recording scores accurately on the input sheets. Double check the scores before concluding the session. If errors or inconsistencies arise, review with the coordinators and arrange for retests before finalizing data. Cool down and wrap up. End of the session with a cool down exercise, proper muscle recovery, collect and secure all input sheets for report generation. So ensure that you are numbering the input sheet also. It can happen that you're so much involved in the on-ground observation feedback. There will be so many queries from children, and that you end up losing your input sheet. So you please number them so that you are able to locate them, count them, post your tag. And at the last, most importantly, thank students, appreciate them for their performance, and repeat that the assessments are a tool to personal learning, personal development, rather than a method to just grade and judge students. So day 2, again, you'll do the beep test, the sit and reach test, and the height and weight test. So you'll follow the same checklist for day 2 as well. If you are having more PE classes, if you have more time, you have after school program as well, you may increase the number of parameters that you're assessing, and you could also proportionately increase the number of days. Let's discuss the post-assessment checklist. First is data collection and validation. So ensure all assessment sheets are completed and recorded accurately. Cross-check collected data with on-ground input sheets for any discrepancies. Validate assessment results with PE teachers and coordinators. So sometimes there could be very abnormal test scores, like for push-ups for grade 3, you may have a score of 40. Instead of 4, somebody, the recorder by mistake wrote 40, right? you need to be aware of these abnormal scores which are out of the range for a particular age group. So that needs to be validated. And ensure students who are unable to participate, are identified for a rescheduled test if applicable. Report, compilation and analysis. Prepare individual students' reports with assessment results. Compare pre and post assessment data to track student progress, as we had discussed, baseline and endline assessments. Then identify various trends in fitness. What is into the what was your score in your PEEP test in 2019? What it is in 2025? So that longitudinal tracking of your scores and what are the trends. So keeping this data safe is very, very important. What are the strengths and areas that needs improvement? And then seek principal approval for final report distribution. This performance report can be shared with coordinators, in turn can be shared with parents, and discuss key findings. So conduct one-on-one discussions with students to help them understand their results and set fitness goals. Provide feedback to teachers on assessment findings to enhance future lesson planning. So this is like if you are handling, as an HOD, you're handling a lot of PE teachers, then you need to have that huddle with the PE teachers to discuss these findings of the assessments, and for next year or for the next quarter, you plan your lesson planning. Review and future planning. Conduct a post-assessment review meeting with PE staff and coordinators, or you can also create your own group of PE teachers who have a discussion on the recently concluded assessments and identify any challenges faced during assessments, areas of improvement, any improvement in the processes, or any modification in some of the test batteries that you like to introduce, and then update the fitness assessment plan based on insight gains from the evaluation process that you have recently conducted after assessments have concluded. Ensure proper storage of data for future reference and longitudinal tracking. This is very important because this data can be used for various trends, comparing these scores to various benchmarks in future for talent identification. So that was the fitness assessments that we have covered. Now moving on to the skill assessments. So skill assessments in physical education is a structured evaluation process used to measure an individual proficiency in performing a specific physical task that contribute to either fundamental movement skills for lower grades, which is like action, balance, and coordination. So these skills include your jumping skills like your leap, skip, jump, your running skills, your other manipulative skills with object, non-manipulative skills like balance. Then you have sport-specific skills relating to sports, which is your dribbling, passing, striking in football, or striking like in cricket, baseball, passing in basketball, rugby, and then it could be very varying as per the sports that have been adopted in your school as per your infra. So skill assessments measure accuracy, evaluates consistency, and assesses the efficiency. How well a movement is performed, ability to repeat the movement effectively is the consistency, and smoothness and control of the skill execution is the efficiency. So skill assessments identify areas of strength and highlight areas for improvement, ensuring students receive a targeted feedback to enhance their performance. So how do you construct a foundational skill or a sports specific skill test? So when developing an assessment of fundamental movement and sports skills, it is crucial to ensure that it evaluates core physical abilities as well as sport specific proficiency. So we will discuss in detail step by step how do we construct the skill test. So first is determine the purpose and the format. The purpose of the test should focus assessing basic motor skills like running, jumping, throwing, and sports skills, dribbling, shooting, passing, or if it is cricket, bowling, batting, fielding. So these skills are critical for developing students' physical competence and readiness for various sports. So these are the skills which will contribute resembling some sport so that they are able to uh, work on these competencies because of these assessments and become confident to try out these sports. So depending on the specific purposes of the test constructor will decide on the format of the test, formative or summative, pre-post assessment, or which grading method that you need. So formative or summative, it's not a question of on, it's how many formative and when summative is going to happen. Second is identify key movement skills. So for example, let's choose a fundamental skill like running. This is what I want to. Or you make a grid, or which skills are you going to assess grade wise. So let's say for nursery, I will only do running, jogging, walking. There has to be a progression. So maybe in K1, K2, then you add jumping. Then in grade 1 and 2, you add sliding, you add galloping, you have skipping, all these various skills that you want to assess. So all the techniques of these have already been covered in the implementation module in this course. Second is the manipulative skills, which are the manipulative skills that you want to teach and assess. Similarly, non-manipulative or body management skills, which includes your yoga or your static and dynamic balances. This will again link to the sports that happening in your school and what college teams, school teams that you are targeting to create. Then choose key sports skills. Again, this is based on the infra and the sports chosen. So it could be dribbling, which is focusing on control, accuracy, speed, passing, focus on direction, power, teamwork, spatial awareness, shooting towards the goal, or focus on hand-eye coordination, timing, force, accuracy, and striking, which focuses on hand-eye coordination, timing, accuracy, and placement. So then selecting the test items. So guidelines for selecting good test items in fundamental and sports skill test. Test items should mirror real game and movement skills. So as close as possible. How is passing done? Let's say if it is a grade 6 passing test in football, right? Is it relevant to have them stand just 2 meter apart and pass to each other? That's not going to really happen in a game, right? So in game situation, it happens really fast. The passes are happening at a running speed or a sprinting speed. Even the partner is which is the target of your pass is always moving around. You have opponents as well. You have a time pressure as well. So all these things, constraints should be taken into account, and the test should be created accordingly. Keep test items simple and easy to understand. Test items should align with the test purpose. Be suitable for different evaluation methods. And tests should be quick, easy to administer, and practical. So these are some of the standardized sports skill tests. So you have Johnson basketball ability test, which tests your shooting accuracy, passing accuracy, and dribbling ability. If you have McDonald's soccer test, which is for your general overall soccer ability. So it doesn't differentiate between various positions in football. It's a very general test. So you have Russell Long volleyball test for volleying and serving ability. You have the Tyner tennis test for playing ability in tennis. So these are standardized tests, but you can also design your own tests which are simpler in nature, especially from the aspect of physical education. These tests more fall on the sports specific or sports specialization, where you are training students for competitive sports for state or national level tournaments. Fourth is acquiring facilities and equipment. Obviously, this was covered during fitness testing as well. So ensure all that necessary equipment, ball cones, timers, balance beams is available in good condition of testing, and consider age and skill level of the students when selecting equipment. So if I'm doing a football kicking test for grade, let's say 3 and 4, I might select a size 3 football. For higher grades, I will select a different size of football. Similarly, for basketball, I may use a size 7 for higher grades, size 3 for a smaller grade. Uh, same is applicable for other sports equipment as well. Then establish a testing protocol, provide a clear instruction and demonstration for each test, allow students to practice before being assessed to ensure that they understand the task. So this we've already covered, that this will be part of your continuous and formative assessment before they do this in the format and the summative assessment. And you standardize scoring systems for each activity, such as point scales, time-based scoring, or accuracy percentage. So point scales could be more of a skill, like throwing a ball or catching a ball. So you give points as per the rubrics covered, the technicalities covered by the student. Time based could be for your which requires timely bound tests. An accuracy percentage can be for your passing, for your shooting. Then you have test administration. You do the test in small groups or individually to allow for a focused assessment. Record results carefully on input sheets, as we had done in the fitness test, and observe students' technique and form, not just outcomes. That's very important. We should not focus on the outcomes, but technique and form, and provide a comprehensive descriptive feedback. Data collection and feedback. Collect the data for each skill test. After the test, analyze the results to identify the student's strength and areas of improvement. Provide constructive feedback to students based on their performance and suggest ways to enhance their skills. So as PE teachers, we also need to master how well we provide feedback. So example could be that I see a glow in your dribbling, and an area of growth could be in the terms of your change in direction. So it has to be very constructive feedback. So skill assessment rubric. A rubric provides clear criteria for evaluating a skill performance based on different proficiency levels. So rubrics are a scoring tools. It's a guiding tool which gives you the pre-established criteria that specify the level quality of performance on an assessment. So reasons to use rubrics include it defines what the target behavior or skill is and how to achieve it, helps maintain instructional alignment with learning objectives, helps teachers be more accurate, objective, and unbiased in grading, inform students and parents of the expectation from the task. So here is an example of rubric for the skill that we are testing, which is running in direction. This is for our age group 7 years to 8 years for grade 2 students, and this is the criteria for competence. The first is that the arm and the leg opposition with swiftness while changing direction. Second is demonstrates a correct pattern of running in all turns. Third is arm swings do not cross the midline of the body, so it's not rotating, and it's swing forwards and backwards. And the foot landing is heel to toe. So these are the 4 criteria for competence. Then how would you grade based on this rubric? So a student who runs in a curved zigzag pathway without stumbling, stopping, falling down or hesitating, and demonstrates all criteria of a correct run, which are the four criteria, then that particular student will get a grade A. So this needs to be very transparent, and both the student and the teacher needs to be on the same page, that what does meeting the criteria mean, all individual criteria that needs to be discussed with the children. So this needs to be very clear, that how am I being observed and being graded. So grade B, students complete but stumbles, runs in an uncoordinated manner, inconsistent stride, it could be your arms crossing the midline, but at least he is covering 3 out of the 4 correct elements or the criteria. And grade C students stops running midway, falls down, and basically able to cover only 2 correct elements out of the 4. So this is how the skill grading will happen based on the rubrics. So skill assessment for primary school, you have a 3-point grading scale. For middle school, you students where you have more sports specific training and you need to master certain competencies, then you could have a more elaborated grading scale, which could be a 5-point grading scale. And you can have more criteria as well, and you can have a more number of parameters to be graded per sport. So here A gets a proficient, weighs 3 points. So B is developing and weighs 2 points. And C is a beginner, weighs 1 point. So this is how your point scale grading system looks like. This is an example now for skill assessment rubric for grade 6 for a sports specific. So this is a common, and this could be used across, let's say, basketball or football. So criteria is accuracy, consistency, efficiency, and application. So accuracy is, how flawlessly or how accurate that pass was, or that shoot was towards the goal. Consistently, if a person is shooting towards the goal, how many times does it hit the target or goes into the goal? That's your consistency. Then efficiency is at what speed, right? With what technique, how much effort is being put into that skill execution, what is the energy conservation, and how smooth it is. So all this is counted under efficiency. And application, are they able to apply their skill in small sided games, or in skill in advanced tactical situations during actual competition matches, not just practice matches. So these are the 4 criteria for competence for a skill assessment rubric for grade 6.